What is going on, Sports Wars? We're here. We're live on a Wednesday night. Not exactly the day we had originally intended, but that's just the way it works out sometimes. For another Fantasy Football Weekly. We don't know what we're going to call this show yet, so we're going with Fantasy Football Weekly for right now. But once again, we're joined, and this time his internet's going to fucking hold out the entire time. We can promise you that.
I promise you that.
LaRock, what's up, buddy?
How we doing? I'm excited to be here with a fresh internet connection. I got new cables all through my attic. We should be good. Should be good. A good time.
There we go. And he's had a little freeze now and then, but the audio's staying good for the most part, not pixelated. So we're going to see if it works. These Florida people, I tell you what, I'm about to move to Florida. I don't know why, because clearly the internet is just dog shit. But
Swampland.
We'll see. Speaking of something else that's dog shit, that would be, I don't know, the feet of players who play for the Indianapolis Colts. Because now we got Carson Wentz and an offensive lineman going down within days with evidently the same exact weird injury. So, of course, we're going to talk about Carson Wentz. We got a couple other projections that we're starting to get for 2021 season that we wanted to take a look at, things that stood out, as well as put out a couple of hot takes and talk about the ever-hovering Deshaun Watson question. What's going to happen with the guy? What do you do with him if you're looking at a draft with him or any of his teammates that he may be throwing the ball to? But let's go and see who's here in the chat. I see Tugs is here. Tugs shared the stream out for Sports Wars. Thank you so much, Tugs. I appreciate that. We got Legatus, Legionus is here. Kaiser Rev, Vader has asthma. Bunch of people coming in and hanging out in the chat, and there's 187. And this is, again, we kind of want to just slowly start growing this audience because fantasy football is never something we've talked about on this channel. So it's going to take a while to kind of get into the algorithm. We know that. So you guys that are here, we're glad that you're here, that you're going to be on us with this journey as we continue to grow this audience and this show. But David, let's talk about Carson Wentz. Now, I think Carson Wentz going to Indianapolis was an interesting prospect because you had a guy who showed flashes in Philly when he could stay healthy, when he could stay on the field. Also showed at times like it looked like he may have regressed, especially after Frank Reich left the Eagles. So now he goes back to Frank Reich in a place where he might feel comfortable in that offense. Kind of a fresh start for the Indianapolis Colts. And all of a sudden, he's out 5 to 12 weeks, which is a pretty big time frame. If he's gone 12 weeks, that is a massive loss for the Colts.
Week 7, yeah.
As a team, but also, of course, for anyone playing fantasy, that's half your season.
Yeah, so if there was anybody that needed the entire offseason to just get reacclimated with camp and skills and different schematics, it was definitely Wentz. I feel terribly bad for the guy. As far as fantasy goes, that entire team is undraftable. So not only is it Wentz, right? But then you lose your Pro Bowl guard in Quentin Nelson. So that hurts Jonathan Taylor. They're going to run out right now. It's Jacob Eason. Somewhat of a rookie. Didn't play much. Quarterback. Are they going to go out and grab somebody? If so, they better hurry up. But so who's out there? Nick Foles?
Well, they could make a move for Nick Foles because the Bears do have 3 quarterbacks right now. You have Blake Bortles, who just recently got released by Green Bay. Blake Bortles is out there.
So the problem is, big picture-wise, is this team was a contender, right? They were loading up. Their offensive was stacked. They got some guys coming back on the defensive side. They got Jonathan Taylor, who had a great rookie year. You got Michael Pittman on the outside. You bring back T.Y. Hilton, and now you don't have a quarterback. So you can't just scrap it, for Bortles. And the division is winnable. That's the thing.
There is a quarterback that's out there who has some experience playing for the Colts, and his name's not Andrew Luck, but he is retired. That's Phillip Rivers. I have heard rumblings. I'm in San Diego, so
you're knee deep.
I follow a lot of people who are friends with Phillip Rivers and have been following Phillip Rivers in the media. And there's been a lot of talk of him saying, right now I'm focused on high school football and what I'm doing here, but he's still staying in shape because he's not ruling out a team coming to call for him at some point. Now, I think he was thinking about potentially later in the season. But now you have the team that he literally just retired from. an offense that he knows, players that he's familiar with that have a need. What do you think the chances could be of Phillip Rivers getting back in the saddle?
From a fantasy standpoint, I hope it's 0. So from a fantasy aspect, the best possible situation, right? San Francisco trades Jimmy to Indy. Then they immediately start Trey Lance. So that skyrockets San Francisco's offense.
Yeah.
Trey Lance with his running ability, with Shanahan. The stuff he's doing in practice is ridiculous. Running with the first teams, he's throwing bombs, he's running. He makes everybody around him better. Jimmy would be a perfect fit for that system in Indy. A lot of zone read, good offensive line, well, minus Nelson, a strong running game, and a winnable division. And that's what I keep stressing. Like the division is winnable. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I just can't see them going with Jacob Eason. They have to make a move. They have to make a move.
But you have 30 days. Like, if Phillip's going to do it, call him now. Mm-hmm. Like, and I'm sorry, the Wentz thing between 5 and 12 weeks, whatever. You might as well call it the year, right? The last thing I want is a quarterback with feet problems. Like,
I think that too, the fact that Wentz is there, like Wentz is the guy. Wentz was going to be the guy. If you bring a Phillip Rivers in, you can't be like, well, all right, Wentz is going to take over at week 7. You know what I mean? Like you have to think about it from that perspective too. So anybody you bring in, unless you're planning on starting them, it can't be somebody who you're then going to have a quarterback competition in the middle of the season.
I just can't see. It's an awful situation because I thought Indy was going to win the division. They had a lot of good pieces on the outside, but now this not only negates the offensive weapons or the wide receiver weapons, but now it crushes Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, and I do think that Jonathan Taylor is going to fall. I still think that even with Wentz out, there's a potential that Jonathan Taylor's workload will still keep him relevant. But
not at the current ADP.
Correct. I think that you're going to have to get him at a value position. That's the only good thing for him. You're going to have to let him fall before you snag him. And I doubt that'll happen in most drafts.
Nope.
Because most drafts you're going to have people that are just going by projections, that are just going by ADP, like you said. So you're going to have somebody in your league that's like, oh, Jonathan Taylor's still available. You guys didn't take him. I got a deal. You're going to have that happen. But he still will be fantasy relevant no matter who's the runner or who's the quarterback there, because they're just going to feed him the ball if Wentz is out, in my opinion.
Correct. And my motto from the jump is I don't hate players. I don't like ADPs. And at this point, Jonathan Taylor, even if he drops to the second round, I still don't want him because the defense isn't going to be good enough to make the games close to make him relevant in just a running game. And plus you have Marlon Mack coming back from the Achilles and you have Hines, who's kind of like the third down satellite back. It was kind of too many mouths to feed to begin with. But I like Frank Wright. I thought Wentz was going to have, maybe not like a comeback season, but at least be relevant.
Yeah, you're not wrong about there already being a lot of people there. And like right now, Jonathan Taylor, from what I was looking at, I mean, I've seen him going late first, early second. I don't know about you, but that's where I've seen him going as far as most people's rankings, which this has to bring him way down. And like I said, definitely a value play. Now, as far as wide receivers, when we're looking at wide receivers, I would stay away from effectively everyone now. Like I
don't want any of them.
None of them are really usable or draftable at this point.
Correct.
At least not to go into a plan into your draft. If someone falls a crazy amount, sure, pick them up. And then maybe you can have somebody that you can use when Wentz hopefully comes back. But it's just a bad situation. And
it's terrible.
You hate to see that stuff, especially on a dumb play. Like he was literally just rolling out.
Yep.
Literally just rolling out to the right and his foot hurt. And all of a sudden he's gone for potentially 3 months.
It's terrible.
Someone else who's having foot problems is Deshaun Watson. And Deshaun,
he has more than foot problems.
He has more than foot problems. He has like 24 women problems. He's got 99 problems, and a bitch is basically all of them. That's how it's going for Deshaun Watson right now. What do you do with the Houston Texans team and the approach to this draft right now?
you skip over the entire team. Like there is not one single draftable person on that team. In fact, on a personal bet, I took Houston under 4.5 wins for the season. They're going to be the worst team in the league by far. It's just, even with Tyrod as quarterback, Watson's not going to play, right? Watson showed up to camp because in the new CBA, they're able to fine him and the team cannot back the fine, right? And now he's hurt, right? Whatever. He's not hurt. He's fine, but he's just, still going to collect the check. So the problem is, big picture wise, they cannot trade him until the allegation stuff gets cleared, right? Because you still have that cloud of Goodell over the head. Until that's solved, nobody's going to give up any assets for them. And they want multiple picks plus the contract. So what team has a need for quarterback, the assets to give them, plus
and
the cap space?
$45 million in cap space.
Exactly. Yeah. Like they blew their load. They should have done it before the draft, right? So now they're going to have to eat it, whether he sits or whatever, until next year. Because until he actually plays and Goodell suspends him, nobody's going to pick him up. Nobody's going to even call. Because if nobody's going to give that much asset and have a guy sit or get suspended for half the year.
Right. It's too much of an unknown. It's too much of an unknown to give up 2 first-round draft picks for Deshaun Watson, who could very well be on the commissioner's exempt list or suspended the entire fucking year. Like that's a very, very realistic possibility. The fact that it hasn't happened already is kind of strange. That there's so much out there right now, that there are civil and now criminal charges as well. We've seen the NFL take action for much, much less. And they're not in the case of Deshaun Watson. Why? I don't know. You can get into the identity politics angle if you want and what the NFL is currently doing. But either way, it's very much an uncertainty. So like we're talking about Carson Wentz, not only is it going to affect Deshaun Watson, where people aren't really going to be picking him up in their drafts, I can't imagine. No, but now that entire team, who didn't look like they were going to be much good anyway, at least with Deshaun Watson back there, they're going to put up numbers. Now, I don't know what's going to happen.
It's undraftable from the wide receivers to the tight ends to the running backs, the 85 running backs they picked up in free agency. It's all no.
Just Bill O'Brien. How long is Bill O'Brien going to last there?
So I think he got replaced this season, right? They hired the wide receiver coach from Baltimore.
Oh yeah, you're right. Never mind.
Yeah. But I mean, Bill O'Brien should have been gone 3 years ago.
You're right. Bill O'Brien's not even there anymore.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's still haunting the team.
Well, his decisions, when you look at the decision to trade away DeAndre Hopkins, when you look at the pickup, like to get an old David Johnson onto your team, you know what I mean? Like Bill O'Brien should have been gone a long time ago. So it feels like he's still there because his decisions are still impacting this team.
Yes.
So right now I did want to go to and look at, like, they got Tyrod Taylor there. That's their backup quarterback, right? Tyrod Taylor we've seen the Tyrod Taylor experiment time and time again. And he only lasts like one season because he ends up getting replaced because he's a guy that's not going to turn the ball over really, but he's also a guy who's not going to push the ball downfield, and your offense is just going to stagnate and stall out. So you have a crowded backfield there as well between David Johnson. They picked up Rex Burkhead. Phillip Lindsay and Mark Ingram, I believe, is there as well.
Yeah.
So
it's trash.
Yeah, there's just no value there for any of those guys.
And the defense is going to be so bad that they're going to be playing from behind anyway. So it doesn't matter if they're going to run the ball or not. It's just, and none of them can really catch. It's terrible. Like from top to bottom, they're going to tank and get the next quarterback in the draft.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
And really, the only fantasy relevant wide receiver is there, I guess, would be Brandon Cooks, who I always think is a fantasy bust every fucking year. I think that Brandon Cooks gets overdrafted every fucking year. They did pick up Anthony Miller from the Bears, which I like.
Chicago was giving him away, and nobody called.
I thought that was crazy. I mean, I'm biased because I'm a Bears fan, But as a Bears fan, I liked what I saw from Anthony Miller. I enjoyed what I saw from Anthony Miller.
Mooney's going to get more targets.
Yeah.
Once Cohen gets back from the ACL, whenever that is, he will get some slot reps. I mean, it's crazy to think that like Houston literally has the worst skill position players of anybody in the league, and it's not even close.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. But speaking of we talked about Anthony Miller getting traded from the Bears. The Bears, to me, it's my team, so I'm always going to be interested in them. But do you really think that Andy Dalton's going to start this season? It's got to be just
week one.
You think he will, though?
Yeah. Just start week one. It doesn't matter. There is definitely a learning curve. Give it 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and then Fields will start and take over. And hopefully he does well. It's an exciting era in Chicago, and I think once Field does start, it helps Robinson. It helps Mooney. It kind of even helps Jimmy Graham, the corpse of, as a red zone target. I mean, it just helps everybody, except for David Montgomery. He sucks.
That's what I was going to ask, because David Montgomery, to me, is the interesting fantasy question when it comes to the Bears, because Matt Nagy is notorious for not fucking running the ball ever. He's made a commitment to get Montgomery 20 touches a game. I don't. If that happens, is David Montgomery a top 15 fantasy running back?
I will say this: currently at ADP, I will draft Damien Williams over David Montgomery. Love Damien Williams. So especially with Cohen being out with ACL, he's now going to be the satellite back. We saw what he did in Kansas City. He took a year off because he didn't want to play with COVID. He didn't have COVID. He just didn't want to play.
Right.
And in the system, the defense isn't going to be good. They're going to be in a crap ton of shootouts with Aaron Rodgers and Minnesota in that division. I think he's going to be a PPR monster in the backfield. I really do.
I like David Montgomery, and I like what he can do. And when they actually throw him the ball, I think he can be effective catching the ball as well. So it's frustrating to me to see them not utilize him.
That's on Nagy, and
it's completely on Nagy. And
to sucks. Me, I don't want the negative unknown, right? I want the positive unknown. I want the good ambiguous. David Montgomery, we've seen it both sides. I'm not going to waste a top 30 pick on that. I've seen that before. Now, maybe with Justin Fields, maybe it gets better. I don't know. But to me, that's not worth the risk.
Who would you rather take, David Montgomery or Jonathan Taylor?
Oh, gross, man.
These are the hard-hitting questions that we're going to ask on Fantasy Football Weekly.
That's a good one. Jonathan Taylor, because he's more athletically gifted. That's it. That's gross, but
yeah. You talked about unknowns, and that's kind of what this episode is a little bit about. Is about the unknowns. Fantasy football is always about unknowns because you never know for sure what's going to happen. But when you look at the Colts and what happened with Wentz, that entire team now, you can't count on anything. When you look at the Bears, not knowing who's going to start at quarterback and how long they're going to be there, that is an unknown. Whether you have Andy Dalton or Justin Fields, or what Justin Fields is going to do. And we talked a little bit before the stream, and I put Dak Prescott in the thumbnail, smiling and grinning, because when you look at the Dak Prescott projections, that we went over, the projections are loving at Dak Prescott right now. They're absolutely loving the guy. And I'm interested to know what you think Dak Prescott's going to do this year, back from that injury that we all got to watch last year.
So last year, he was actually my personal choice for MVP. And he was going to win fantasy leagues, and he was going to smash. Obviously, the injury happens. He was on pace to throw for 5,000. That defense was awful. The O-line wasn't good, which then in turn affected the running game. And he has the weapons. He probably has – you can make a case they have the best wide receiver trio in the league. And I just think with another year with Lamb and Gallup being a rookie deal, I think if he stays healthy, you can see him throwing for 5,000. I do think Zeke's in much better shape, and I think the O-line is going to get better, so I don't think the attempts will be there. But you want a piece of that offense. whether it's Cooper, Lamb, Gallup, Zeke, even Tony Pollard, you want a piece of that.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. The Tony Pollard factor, from everything we're hearing, it sounds like Tony Pollard is going to be utilized quite a bit.
He's good.
He is good and talented, and in a PPR league, he could be a fucking monster if they get him those touches. But yeah, you look at the weapons that he has, it's crazy. It's really nuts. Is crazy. Like CD Lamb and Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. Like that's your top three wideouts. Is there? I don't think there's a better combo in the league. I mean, that I could pull from the top of my head.
You can make a case for Cincy being Chase, Boyd, and Higgins only because Cooper's health. So if Cooper doesn't play a whole year, that hurts. But yeah, it's Dak's got weapons, and that's all we want in fantasy. That's all I care about. I want to shoot it to the moon, and they definitely have the ability to do that.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if a team is going to go 8-8, or I guess in the Cowboys' case now 8-9. In fantasy, if they're putting up numbers, sometimes the bad teams are your best fantasy. Like it's because they're always behind, they're always throwing the ball. So that's what we're obviously talking about, and that's what we're looking at, and that's definitely what the Cowboys could be this year: a average team that puts up a ton of fucking numbers.
The only negative real quick about Dak is I want my quarterbacks to run, right? That's the Konami code. With Dak's ankle, is he going to be hesitant to scramble?
Maybe. I
don't know.
He was never a huge runner to begin with. He's mobile enough, but he's not Josh Allen, right? He's not gonna get 6 touchdowns or whatever like Josh Allen. But,
but he could still get you 30, 40, scramble yards, maybe a bootleg for a touchdown. Like that stuff adds up.
Yeah.
And it's just
that's why Josh Allen is the top projected guy in fantasy, right? Because not only did he put up like 40 touchdowns last year, but he's going to get those chunks. He's going to rush for 50 yards in a game. He's going to get a touchdown rushing. So it's massive when you're talking about a quarterback.
Because it's basically a Konami code. It's basically a cheat code for the fact that if you have a guy throwing for 300, that's great. But if he's also rushing for 70, well, for rushing, 10 yards is a point. That's 7 points. That's a touchdown just for scrambling.
Yep.
That's the difference between winning your league and not making the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take a look at those projections so everyone can see them as well. Yeah. Load everything back up here. Let's just get the quarterbacks because that's what we're talking about right now. And this is what I mean. I think these are low. I think projections are always low, to be honest, because you're never going to have, for instance, when you start a game and Patrick Mahomes is projected to get 25 points, no one's ever going to be projected to score 5 or 6 touchdowns, but you're going to have one of those games in a season, especially for Patrick Mahomes. So projections are always a little bit low, especially when it comes to touchdowns. But this is, we're looking at Fantasy Pros right now. We'll probably use a lot of different websites throughout the year, but Patrick Mahomes, number one projected guy across the board. But this is why I saw Dak, and I'm like, look at Dak. Like you said, he was on pace to throw for 5,000. This year, 5,000 will probably be very attainable because you get an extra game. So that the 5,000 yard is going to be nothing. We could see 8 guys at fucking 5,000 yards this year, honestly.
Easily. And I mean, the touchdown projections are super, super modest. Like to have nobody over 40, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I think we can go back to 2020 really quick. Aaron Rodgers threw for 48. And then Russell Wilson and Tom Brady both had 40. Patrick Mahomes at 38 and Josh Allen with 37. But when we look at Josh Allen, let's filter just by quarterbacks and look at their rushing. Because Lamar Jackson, look at these numbers, dude.
That's the cheat code. Yeah.
Well, this is why Lamar Jackson is going to be very, very fantasy relevant, even if he doesn't throw great this year, which he probably will. He still will get his yards in the air. That offense still will do things in the air. But if if this man gets 1,000 yards rushing, that is fucking huge. And of course, those touchdowns. Josh Allen projected to get 8 touchdowns rushing, and Kyler Murray too.
Yeah, Kyler. Where's Jalen on that?
Right here.
Yeah, I mean,
this dude. Well, Jalen Hurts. It'll be interesting to see. They've gone all in on him, I suppose you can say. By that, I just mean they're just going to let him do stuff. I don't think they really believe in him.
Just let him do things, right? I mean, he was extremely relevant when he started and finished a game. He threw for 300 multiple times, and the running, that's stuff that you can't, as a defense, you can't really prepare for because they're all broken plays. It's like backyard football, and it's a cheat code for fantasy. Like it's unreal. That's why you want your quarterback to run.
Yeah, absolutely. You want them to be able to run and to do it on occasion. Of course, these guys are always. I'm worried about Kyler Murray. I'm worried about Kyler Murray's ankles getting broken by getting tackled.
Small.
Like he's tiny. Russell Wilson's a smaller guy too, but he is always.
He's stout.
He's stout, and he avoids getting big hits. Like he just does. He has this knack about him, and some guys have that. Some guys have this knack where they will just be able to turn the right way and not take a square shot. And Russell Wilson's always had that. We'll see if he continues that way. What do you have? What are you, in your opinion, your most controversial takes on what's going to happen this fantasy football season?
For fantasy, TJ Hawkinson will be tight end number 1. I think he overtakes Kelsey. Not because Kelsey's not good or anything like that, but just the fact of the volume is perfect for Hawkinson in Detroit. There's no wide receivers, right? There's none. There's Goff, who's a check down machine. That O-line is fantastic. You have Swift and you have Hawkinson. And you have Dan Campbell, who's an old school dude. And Goff is fine when he's protected, right? He's not going to, go through his number 2 and number 3 progression. He's not that, which is why McVay got rid of him in LA. He's going to check it down. And we saw, tidbits of what Hawkinson can do when he has 7, 8, 9 targets. And I think you extrapolate that over an entire year. I think he will be the tight end number 1 this year. And that's a really burning take, but I have bold. I have him in 90% of my best ball leagues. I'm all in on Hawkinson.
That is bold considering.
You like that? You asked me hot. That's hot.
That's hot take. If we're looking at tight ends, I want to go see what we saw last year because pretty sure Kelsey had probably close to 100 receptions.
Oh, of course.
Let's see. Last year, Travis Kelsey had 105 receptions. Darren Waller had 107.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. So Kelsey had 105 receptions. Hawkinson had 67, which is nothing to, snub your nose at.
And again, he missed some games. It's going to be a new offensive system, but it's the concentration of targets, right? They don't have a wide receiver 1. Who they have? Danny Amendola? They got dudes I can't even pronounce on the depth chart. They got rid of Marvin Jones. Golden Tate is a bum on the street. He's not even signed by anybody. But yeah, so they don't have anybody. Plus you remove Stafford, who's a gunslinger, with Goff, who's a check down machine. And I just think that we saw glimpses of it. The O-line is great. So,
they traded away Galladay too, right?
Yeah.
Kenny Galladay was gone.
He's in New York. They don't have a number 1.
Anybody. They don't have anybody to throw the ball to. You're right.
Yeah. So I'm just, again, and his ADP right now, I think is around 66, 70-ish. So you can get him in around 5.5, 6.5. To me, that's a great value. And I mean, Kansas City has been extremely fortunate with injuries. Tyreek really hasn't missed any games. Kelsey really hasn't missed any games. I mean, what happens if Mahomes misses a legit stretch? Or what happens if Kelsey rolls an ankle? Because tight ends, they block. That's still their thing. It's not like a alpha wideout who's just going deep, right? But that's my really hot take. I mean, if it doesn't pan out, then I'm going to lose some of my money anyway. But at least I put my money where my mouth is. I'm all in on Hawk.
I think that's an interesting one. That is hot, but it's not when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense.
But I mean, that's what fantasy is, right? I mean, it's a hot take when you got to peel back the layers of the data and the depth chart. And okay, this is new. This is new. My really scorching hot take, which isn't going to come to fruition, Cam Akers was going to finish the running back one. I loved Cam. He was going to do so well, and now the Rams don't even have a running back. But
yeah, I'm interested to see what the Rams do this year with Stafford. I think a lot of people are rooting for Matt Stafford in a way, going out there. It will be interesting. I want to see him and Cooper Kupp. That's what I want to see this year.
Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, even Josh
Robert
Reynolds.
Woods, dude. Robert Woods. It's crazy to see the kind of resurgence, I guess, of Robert Woods in LA, because 5 years ago, Robert Woods was like a meme for me in fantasy, because it was like, he was a guy who probably got picked up 6 times throughout a season on the waiver because people would pick him up and drop him when he was in Buffalo and stuff. Yeah. And one of my buddies, literally, he would offer me huge spam trades at me. And Robert Woods was always involved in some way. And he had just picked him up from the waiver and he tried to trade him. And it's crazy to me see what Robert Woods has been able to do, in that offense with Sean McVay with the Rams. So Stafford this year, they have a real chance to, get back to being contenders, I think, potentially.
Yeah, they'll definitely win more than 10. I think they'll win the division. The O-line is good, a little bit old, but that's okay. The defense is extremely top-heavy. If they stay healthy, they're going to be stout. And you have Stafford with McVay. I mean, what more could you want? A gunslinger. And you got Kupp and Woods and Josh Reynolds. You got Deshaun Jackson. He's going to miss probably half the year with a hamstring injury. But he's still a field stretcher. They got the weapons, and Cam Akers was going to just dick smash. Can I say that on this show?
Yes.
He was going to smash so hard, and the Achilles, and that's a wrap. But
so now I guess, is it Henderson?
Don't draft him. Don't even go. Yeah, but they're gonna have some sort of committee. They keep saying Henderson's doesn't have the body to do a whole bell cow workload. I mean, that guy, you got to think, when Cam Akers lost snaps last year when he got hurt, they had Mac Brown getting more snaps than Henderson. Well, now Brown's not there at all, and they still don't want to give Henderson 100%. So I don't know. Maybe somebody will get cut. Maybe Sonny Michel. Maybe they'll trade for Melvin Gordon. Henderson's not the dude. Do not draft him right now. His ADP is like 45, which is ridiculous. That should project that shit. That's awful.
It's going to be somebody that's not on the team. You're right. That's 100%. Who's going to end up. That's who's going to end up getting the majority of the fantasy points from the Rams backfield. It's someone who's not on the team right now.
Yeah. So just stack Stafford, Woods, and Kupp. That's all you need, and just print money.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a terrible idea. Are we going to have is Hebe going to be fantasy relevant there as a tight end, you think?
I believe so, just as a red zone target. I mean, McVay does like it. And again, you can't, in that offense, everybody's going to be able to eat because they're going to throw so much. I actually sprinkled a little bit. I got it at 15-1 odds of Stafford leading the league in passing yards. As soon as the Akers injury went down.
There's definitely a chance of that happen. Definitely.
Absolutely. As long as Stafford can stay healthy. I know that he banged his thumb, but he's fine. X-rays were negative. Stafford and McVay. You want McVay with a gunslinger, and that's, he had Jared Goff with a water pistol.
I was just going to say, think of what he was able to do with Goff, that Super Bowl run year. You know what I mean? When everything was clicking right. The fact that he did that with Jared Goff is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Goff owes him $100 million because that was all McVay. 100%, it was all McVay. But yeah, Stafford in that offense, the defense is going to be good, and they're going to get into a bunch of shootouts in that division because you got Shanahan, you got Russ, you got Kyler. I mean, it's going to be fireworks all year. So you're gonna want a little piece of that offense, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, but we want to keep these streams a little bit shorter because we're probably going to do it once or twice a week. So, 30, 45-minute segments. Wanted to go over, make sure we hit that Carson Wentz news, the Deshaun Watson stuff, some of the uncertainty But definitely we're going to keep doing these. So thank you 100% to everybody that's been in the chat. We appreciate you guys being here. We're going to keep building it up, try to find a good day and time to do it so we can get some consistency and continue to build this up. But what do you guys think about all of this? What do you think about the topics we covered? Do you have any hot fantasy takes of your own? Make sure you leave it in the comments after the stream here. David, thanks for hanging out, man. Your internet held up. Good to go. Solid as hell. So
looking forward
man.
to it.
I'm looking forward to the rest of this fantasy season.
Yeah, should be good. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thank you for hanging out with Sports Wars. We will talk to you later. Peace.